Hey, soul searching peeps. It's been a while since I've done a video. I happen to be in New York. I'm at Union Square, traveling for my company, which is soulcandy.co. That's what I do for a living. And what better place to be actually right now is in New York City. It's just great, having a good time. But I've been thinking about a few things since we last spoke, and one of them I wanted to tell you about when I started going through all my stuff, all my doubts with the church and just not feeling confident in how I felt about the church and the things that I was learning, you know, all that stuff that goes with it. At that time, I was teaching the Laurels. So if any of you are watching this and are not members of the Mormon Church or not familiar with it, that is like 16, 17, 18-year-old girls, like a Sunday school class. It's actually a really great program as far as activities and things to do for the girls, but what was happening is they have correlated manuals, so every Mormon girl that age, on any particular Sunday, is getting the same lesson. Whether you're here, whether you're in California, whether you're in Norway, we are all getting the same lessons. And I was doing that, and of course I can't remember how long I had that calling, probably a year and a half maybe, as I was going through my crisis of faith, so to speak. And as I started learning that all that I was about the history of the church and not being able to reconcile it with how I felt, I was having a hard time teaching these young girls things that I didn't agree with. And not that they're stringent things, but everything, how do I put it? I don't know. I just wasn't agreeing with it, and I felt like I couldn't continue teaching something that I was not comfortable with. And I found that I started getting more liberal and liberal in my teaching and kind of veering away from the actual lessons, because you're supposed to stick to the stories. And the things that were in those books were quotes from the prophets and leaders in the 50s, 60s, 70s. Sometimes I'd read some of those quotes and go, what? So I'd try and bring other things in and try to change it a little bit. But I knew I wasn't doing what, they wanted me to do. And I needed to respect that. That was fine. I wasn't out to change the way the church was doing things. I just knew that I couldn't do it. So I made a decision to no longer have that calling. And in the church, when you are called to a calling, it's kind of looked down upon to turn it down or to be done with it. You kind of do that calling until the bishop or the powers that be in your ward decide that it's time for you to do something else. And it's kind of a no-no to say no to a calling, but I couldn't do it. I honestly would be preparing my lessons, and I just was no longer feeling good with the material that I was taught to teach these girls, who I loved and adored. I loved the girls, and I loved being with them and the camaraderie that's, with a group of teenagers. And so I remember sitting in church one Sunday in sacrament meeting, and I just decided, this is it. I'm done. I'm going to remove myself from this calling. Well, the old Amy would have gone through the proper channels, and the proper channels would be to go talk to the bishop and say, Bishop, I need to be released from this calling. And what usually happens is the bishop would say, okay, that's fine, well, hopefully that's what the bishop would say. But anyway, but they'd say, can you just stay for another few weeks or a month or 2 months until we find someone to replace you? Which I understand that need. It takes some time. They call someone and they have they extend the calling, and then they set them apart, which means they give them a special prayer. So when they're doing that job, they, have a little more inspiration to fulfill that calling. But I didn't want to go through that, because I felt like I'm done. I'm done teaching. And it was very liberating when I sat there in sacrament meeting, took a note. I wrote a note to the young women's president, who I actually love and adore, a very neat lady. But I thought, you know what? This is my decision, and I'm done teaching. And there are plenty of capable people in the ward and in the young women's organization who could, take over. So I just wrote her a loving note, and I just said, I'm just going through some stuff. And I didn't go into detail. But I just said, I'm done, in a very nice way. And I put the note in the manual. I went and I found her after sacrament meeting, and I just said, her name and I gave her a hug, and I put the note was in the manual, and I handed it over to her, and I just said, I won't be teaching anymore. And knowing me and how I've lived my life in the church, I've always just kept all the rules, and I've done what I've told, and of course accept every calling that comes my way, and I've had the whole gamut of callings. But there was something very liberating about deciding that I was done and I wasn't going to go through the channels that are expected. And I was just thinking about that today, and of course my mind's been going in a million different ways as I've here in New York. And I can't even remember what sparked that, but it was just a very liberating feeling when I started to take the control back for me and what I felt was good and right and what I needed to do. So I just kind of felt like I wanted to share that, because I know when you've grown up in the church or any type of organization that kind of tells you how it should be, when you start taking back that control, it feels a little awkward. I mean, you're stretching new muscles, you're not used to that. And so for me to start to kind of stretch my wings and say, no, I'm not comfortable with this, I need to be done, it was really liberating. And so if, or wherever you are at this part of your journey, if you find you're in that same position, do what you think's right. Do what's in your heart, what's in your gut, follow that feeling, because I didn't want to be responsible for teaching something to these young, beautiful women, you know, whose parents are keeping them on that path at that time in their life, if I wasn't comfortable with it, and it wasn't for me anymore. So I just wanted to share that with you. One of you probably needs to hear it, or you're in that exact same situation, and today's the day you're going to write your letter and you're going to be done. If you're in that situation. So I hope you're doing well. I hope your soul-searching journey is going well, and that you're making decisions that feel good and right for you.